just one thought, a little off topic for both of you. You speak beautifully. You're articulate. You're very smart. You've written books. What's happened? I mean, I'm convinced. I'm sold. I'm 100%, on board that what you're saying is urgent. When you've gone to government officials, school boards, educators, um, leaders of community leaders, what has been the response? And this is not like subtle stuff. You're saying dramatic, powerful things backed up by tons of information. What has happened when you've told people what has the response been?
Well, I can speak from my own experience that when I partnered with the Environmental Working Group in 2013, and we wrote a CME, which is a continuing medical education 1-hour program on endocrine disrupting chemicals and health effects. And then I worked to try to get into probably, I think it turned out to be about 25 grand rounds departments across the country, because they didn't want to hear about EWG as being sort of a thought of commercial, connection. I had to go in as a physician to get into those grand rounds. I spoke to those more or less 25 big institutions. Academic institutions gave a great talk, I thought, well referenced. It took a year to prepare for it. And I got very little response in the way of, really making actual change. There was a neonatal department I spoke to the whole department. And, at the end of the talk, we give resources for instance, changing out respiratory and neonatology plastic tubing and respiratory equipment, and that it contained DEHP and certain phthalates that are well described as being higher loads, obviously in preemies, with very poor ways of detoxifying in their little systems. In fact, respiratory equipment was one of the highest causes of high loads of those chemicals of BPA and phthalates. And at the end of the talk, I have several slides on Physicians Without Harm, a nonprofit that helps hospitals change out their equipment to, manufacturers that don't use those chemicals. And I can tell you in 25 lectures, I didn't have one person come up to me after any of those talks to ask me about that. And in fact, it was one of those situations where it makes sense now in hindsight, because in medical school, I didn't learn about environmental health, nothing. We didn't learn nutrition. I mean, we still don't learn nutrition in medical school. People don't understand that. But even today, in some of the best, all the medical schools, but even the best institutions for medical training, students are given upwards of 5 to 8 hours of nutrition information over the course of 4 years of medical school. So 5 to 8 hours in 4 years is pretty shocking. So the fact that they're not getting nutrition in, which is so basic and intuitive and so well described and studied, the fact that they would not put in environmental health, endocrine disruption, chemicals, EMF, just a variety of topics is not so shocking at this stage in what I've learned. And so the story goes, as I talk about in my intro of the book, is that I was home watching, paying my babysitter when she was leaving, and she asked me about her shampoo and her conditioner and asked if they were safe. And literally a light bulb went off. And I realized that there's a whole demographic, a whole population of young people that might be interested in this information. And why not? They're young. They may eventually choose to have children. They're tech savvy. They're super self-conscious, as we all were when we were preteen and teenagers, to, what they put in on and around their bodies. And so that began the work of studying and doing pilots in high schools to see if this is something that they even wanted and would retain, and what their baseline knowledge was. And it turns out it was a win. So I think in retrospect, looking at sort of these messages, I'm very frustrated overall. But I think that when you look back at the last 5 years, I've seen tremendous amount of education to the consumer that has really exploded. You see books that are coming out that are going to bestsellers. You see, books like Shauna Swan, who got really great PR support from a really like an angel investor that helped promote that book, which was fabulous, because of course you can write a fabulous book, but if it doesn't get promoted in the channels that we know reach people, it's like a tree in the forest that falls, right? So these are the kinds of things that we are all supporting each other for. We're all promoting each other's good work. and really trying to work collectively to get these messages out. And I do believe, I'm very optimistic that it's making its way into the consumer public. I personally would like it get into schools. I would say I'd waste time in medical schools, but they're pharma subsidies, that really have not been helpful with nutrition or medication issues. So, I know to go where the love is and spend the energy in the right place, but schools, elementary schools, high schools, colleges, all really could benefit greatly and have young people that are really willing to and interested in this type of information. So I say go where the love is, and go where your efforts are appreciated. And I think that makes the job of doing this kind of work. I'm sure Theodora would probably speak to that, but it's frustrating when you hit closed doors. It's very warm, heartwarming to reach people that really want to hear this material, and it kind of translates into bigger populations.
Theodora, did you want to comment on that at all?
No, I can ditto a lot of what Aly's saying with similar experiences, but people are really interested in what can I do and how do I do it? And they want practical, actionable information of what to do, because it does seem overwhelming. And I'm just thankful that you're, the work that you're doing in schools and with kids and with teenagers. We have a page on our website on environmental health movies, and I think about the movie Stink, which you're probably familiar with. There's so much great. We just watched Toxic Beauty, which is another excellent film that's just not just come out, but more recent film. There's a lot of films about this, and I think getting people, interested in this, because I was talking to someone who said to me, you know what high schoolers are really interested in about this is they don't like being lied to. They don't like that things are being hidden from them. And this issue of EMFs and toxic chemicals is like there are just so many stories of where the facts have been known, but the information is in the fine print. It's been hidden. Dr. Deborah Davis, in her book, A Secret History of the War on Cancer, she's our founder and president, and we have all of her resources online, documents, stories going back to World War II and previous to World War I about this, like with cell phones. What I tell students is, I wanted to hold one up, but I have a lot of old phones I'm always gathering as my props, but in the phone, there is a warning that says it should not be held touching your body. Now that's been changed and redrafted in a way you might not understand it, but it's deep in the settings. For Apple phones, it's online under a section called RF exposure that you will only find if you go deep and search online as to how to find this. But the phones say that because they are not tested touching our bodies. They are simply not tested touching the body, the torso, or even this way. They're with this ear that they have this plastic ear that makes a space, and the phone is angled, whereas people are going like this. Well, they're not tested like that. And kids are like, wait, what? They're not tested touching the body? No. And when we try to get labeling on that, the industry is funding these massive campaigns, as well as the legal teams, to take those laws down, as they just did with a recent legal action with Berkeley, the Berkeley case, where now this really incredible, what can I say? San Francisco did it much earlier, and then Berkeley tried to have these right to know laws, which were so important. And yet the industry has now succeeded in having it be made, not be allowed to have that law, where people would simply be informed that when you have the phone in your bra, in your pocket, that you could be exceeding legal levels. The kids don't like that, I've found, and people don't like to be lied to. But when you jump into the issue of electromagnetic fields and chemicals, baby powder and so forth, there's so much where the companies are putting forward half-truths and or covering things up in the case of cell phones and wireless. They are war gaming the science, and that's their own words. You attack the studies, you attack the scientists, you get your PR out there and attack the credibility of the scientists who are speaking on this. But I'm finding a lot is happening. So I'm quite inspired with the doors that are finally is starting to open, and it can't come quick enough. So if we all move it forward, I think we're going to get there.